How is branding going to save the world? No, like really, like how can branding save the world? Hey, I'm Kat May Designs brand identity designer, talking to you guys about all things rebrand, including how to rebrand ourselves and our businesses from the inside out, so together that we can rebrand the world, creating lasting, sustainable, effective, real life change, starting with ourselves, our businesses, and our communities. So today what I wanted to talk about is, what does that even mean, rebrand the world, and like how ridiculous of a concept is that? Seems like something a nutty person would say. Me. So in this video, I'm going to tell you why I believe in that, why that's my mission, my purpose, and the reason for starting this channel, so that you get sort of an overview of the things that I'll be talking about in this channel. So what do I mean when I say rebrand your world, and why do I think that it could create sustainable, lasting, effective change? One, everything is identity, or how we identify, which is just another way of saying everything is mindset. Everything that you do in your life, any self-improvement, anything that's blocking you, any issues you're facing, anything that you want to grow, change, or improve, all of it always comes back to mindset, the way that you are thinking about it. And how do you change your mindset? I think a great way of going about it is to think of it more in the way that you identify. How do you identify yourself? So we'll talk about that. The second thing is ending destructive cycles. What the heck does that have to do with branding? But it's the second thing I'm gonna talk about in terms of identity and how to identify yourselves and creating impactful, lasting change. The third thing is using branding, marketing, and business as a tool for self-awareness, self-development, and as a way of understanding the world around us. So another thing that you could say, and marketers would love this, is that everything is marketing. It's not true, right? As a marketer, I don't actually believe that, but marketing is a great parallel for the way that life works. What is marketing at the end of the day but thinking about people, psychology of people, the way that they think, and like really more about buying decision, but buyer decision is so much based in feelings, mindset, and identity. So we're gonna talk about that all today, kind of create those bridges and fill those gaps, and hopefully communicate the message, the point, and the mission behind what I'm really trying to do here. Everything is mindset. Everything is identity and mindset. What do I mean when I say that? Everything that we do, whether we realize it or not, is determined by our mindset of it, right? How we think of it. And oftentimes we're moving and interacting in the world in a subconscious sort of way. We're not really aware of what we're doing or why we're doing, what choices we make or why we make those choices, and how far back they go. They almost always come from someplace, right? Something I often say is that people make buying decisions based off of how they perceive a product or service will make them feel. If you understand that in terms of buying decisions, then you can understand that in terms of everything. The actions that you take, the choices you make, why you do something often have to do with how you either feel right now or how you want to feel later. And a lot of that is rooted in and driven by whatever stuff you've got going on in your past. There's a really interesting thing with self-development. There is almost like there's two paths. So there's one path where there's you seeking out new information, trying to learn better, trying to do something different, and exposing yourself to new stuff, right? And wanting to be there, right? Your perception of what there is, right? A better place, right? But you're not quite there yet. This is just the reality, because you're learning still, right? You're still exposing yourself to this new stuff. It's still unfamiliar, right? That's why you're seeking it out. So there's this frustration of like, I see where I want to be, but I'm not there yet. And how do I get there? And it's very frustrating. So then there's this is you, right? Where you're actually at, which is at the moment, I'm thinking, assuming, feeling like you're struggling, feeling like you're not making it, feeling like things are hard, trying to learn new things and not really knowing how to implement them or make them happen. So there's sort of these two paths that we walk in self-development, right? If you're someone who's like consciously, intentionally trying to improve. So what I like to suggest is it's okay. So you look at where you are right now and understand that this is your current identity, and that this version of you was created by all of the stuff that happened before, and then that's okay. And I like to think of that as now that's part of my brand story. For me, it literally is, right? It wasn't always, because I've been a graphic designer, a brand designer, right? And so my story was just branding. But now as I'm moving forward in this new path and trying to talk more about this stuff really openly, it is part of my story. All the struggles and stuff that I went through, all of the things that I went through that got me to this place now, that gave me the knowledge that I have now, or the experiences that I have now that I'm able to share. So there's that part, and that's part of your brand story, and that's part of your identity. The reason why I think rebranding is so important is because you can see that as your current identity, where you are right now, and be okay with that and try to be at peace with that, because it does not have to be your identity forever, right? Because you can rebrand yourself. You can create a new identity for yourself and move on over to the new sense of identity that you really want, right? And you can create this identity with intention, right? There's a lot of quotes that are floating around the internet. Let me try to think of one off the top of my head. They say things like, design your life, right? Literally design your life, like graphic designer, hey, designing my life. There's also ones that are like, imagine the highest version of yourself and then start showing up as that person, right? Sounds like it's so simple. It's not always that easy. But this is why I really like the idea of branding and using branding as sort of your metaphor or your tool to create a new sense of identity. So my goal here on this channel is to teach you, as a brand designer, as a visual graphic brand designer, how I create brands for businesses, right? So how you can do it for your business, and then use that as a parallel, as a metaphor, and take it on over to your personal life when you're ready. The reason why I like this is because oftentimes with self-development and self-help, we learn all these things. And like I said, we learn them, but like, how the frick do you make it happen, right? It takes a second. It's not instant, right? You can't necessarily see results in immediately, or even like if we're thinking in terms of marketing, 3 to 6 months, right? Like in marketing, you can start to see results fairly quickly if you're being good and getting, being consistent and doing things with intention. You can almost start to see stuff start to shift. It's a little harder in yourself, right? So we can use this safe space, our businesses, our passions, our creative drive, all that stuff, that good stuff, to learn about how to brand and market ourselves, to create an identity, one that we can show up in comfortably, one that resonates with us, that speaks to our soul and our passion and our purpose. And then hopefully parallel those same tools over on into our personal life, right? Because a lot of the times the things that you need in business to be successful are the exact same things you need in your personal life, right? To be happy, feel fulfilled, joy, all of that good stuff, right? If you need boundaries in your business, you also need them in personal life. Oftentimes, if we have low boundaries in our personal life, we also have them in our business. If you have issues with low sense of self-worth, you might have that also in your business. You might not be charging the right rates. So all of that stuff come into play together. One of my favorite things to say is you are the is to your biz, right? And so you are the driving force of your business. So the more you take care of yourself, grow yourself personally, your business grows. Or the more that you focus on your business, grow it, and know that these are, that they're parallel and aligned, the more then you can step up in your personal life as well. Ask yourself sort of the same questions and see how you might grow in both. That's really the goal of this channel. So, number 2, ending destructive cycles. What the heck does that have to do with branding? Because that's where I was. So if you don't know my story, a real quick synopsis. I was suicidal for a really long time. I was depressed. I had suicidal thoughts as young as 9 years old, which I know doesn't make any sense, but I can talk about more about that later. But just like, I had so many suicidal thoughts on such a daily basis that they felt normal to me. Normal. I still hated it. Obviously, I felt tortured at the time, but I didn't even know who I was without them. I couldn't even imagine what life would look like without them. And I didn't really know what to do about them. I was just so used to it, so comfortable in the discomfort, right? And then the other thing is depression leads to other stuff, other negative cycles and other negative relationships. And so I ended up in a toxic relationship. It became very violent and abusive, especially towards the end. I got pregnant really young. I was a mom by the time I was 20. And I was just unhappy, right? And miserable. And I just hated myself, hated my life, and just didn't have, I didn't know how to have healthy relationships with myself or with any of the people in my life or at work. I didn't know what healthy even looked like. And so in my desperation, I was determined to end those generational cycles. I was terrified of passing that off onto my daughter and having my daughter, I knew if I didn't work on myself, that it would be very likely and inevitable for my daughter to repeat the same cycles. And so I fought, and worked really hard to rebrand myself, to recreate a new identity, to learn new things, to expose myself to new stuff. And like, just for time frame sort of idea, this is like stuff that I was doing like 10 years ago, which is crazy that I can even say something happened for me 10 years ago. But, at the time, there wasn't as much access to mental health and personal development as there is now. There obviously was still the personal development, self-help industry, but it was very taboo. I remember even briefly saying to friends that I read a self-help book and like the looks, right? Like the just, and like, or telling my parents that I was going to therapy, and my mom's like, you don't need therapy, you just need more Jesus. You just need more prayer, right? Oh, simple, easy. Just go to church and deal with this clinical depression that I have. So it took a lot of me trying to expose myself and figuring out how to open myself up to new information, and new information that wasn't necessarily as accessible as it is now, and was very taboo, and to overlook any of those issues that I might not have had with it. The reason why I think it's really important to say that is that when you are depressed, right, if you are suicidal, and you see that there are resources out there, we all know that there are suicidal hotlines. We see, sometimes I see billboards about depression. And even though that's great to have them, you don't necessarily want to identify with the person on the billboard, right? It's as depressed as you are, it is also depressing to admit that you need that thing, that you are that giant sad face on the billboard on the freeway, right? And it almost feels like, no, I don't want to go there. I'm not that bad. And instead of getting the help you need, you keep spiraling down, right? And you spiral so far that even if you know that you're that person, you don't want to make the phone call because of the shame that brings, because of the bad feelings that brings, because you associate reaching out for help or being that depressed person with all of that negative personas that you've seen, right? And this is not to shame or hate on, these groups and organizations that are really trying to do good. They're trying to provide benefits and resources, and I'm sure that they're impactful and do make a difference. But I want to talk about these things in a way that doesn't feel shameful and that doesn't depict things in such a negative and sad, depressing light, which I know is like a hard thing to say. I need to talk about depression in a way that's not depressing, but that's really what I mean, because I want to focus more on the result and the desirable, which is a marketing tactic, right? I understand your pain point. Here is the desirable result, which is to get out of it, right? To change your life, to be better, to finally feel happier, to get there, right? It is a long and I wouldn't say like a long and hard journey, because I don't want to make you feel like, oh, there's no hope because it's long and hard. It is work. For sure it is work. But you can get there faster than you think. And for me personally, once I started really taking this stuff serious, I think it was like 2 or 3 years. And after that, I was like, I haven't had a suicidal thought since. I haven't needed depression, or I haven't needed therapy since. I haven't needed medication or anything like that. So, but I really had to step out of my comfort zone, learn new things, and take action and just stick to it, hoping that things would work out. And thankfully for me, they did start to click and they did start to move. So that's the goal. That's the second goal of this channel, is to talk about how do we end destructive cycles? How do we end toxic relationships, even things like that, right? Talking about depression, talking about abusive relationships, right? Like, domestic violence, even that is a very similar thing where we don't talk about it in a way that people want to identify with it. We don't promote help in a way that people want to identify with that. If you're someone, and there's different levels of it, right? I want to be really respectful of the different levels, and levels sounds awful, but there's different, so I don't know if there's a better way of saying it, but there's, different ranges of what domestic violence and abuse might look like. And I want to be respectful of that and be really aware of how we're talking about it, because I think what happens sometimes is we talk about things in general in society. We tend to talk about things in black or white, right? It's either here or it's there. It's either your like happy, loving relationship, and then you talk about, oh, my relationship was abusive, and people automatically assume that, it's just the worst of the worst based on the stories we've heard so far, right? In the media and whatever else. And that you can be with somebody who at their heart and center is a good person. They try their best. They mean well. They're just another flawed human being, just like I am, just like we all are. But their way of dealing with anger and dealing with negative, uncomfortable emotions is more violent, right? And so it's a very diplomatic way of saying that, but it's the truth, right? So I want to talk about things that can hopefully bring some neutrality to it so that we can have an actual conversation about how to change it. I hope that makes sense. Because when we talk about things in extremes, we miss so much of the bulk that we can cover, that we're not able to problem solve in all the other little ways that could hopefully make progress. We miss so many people in between, and people either identify with one or the other, or they choose to be blind to it because they don't identify with it, right? I was there. That's where I was, right? I was like, my relationship is not that. It's bad. There's some issues. We get into some stuff, but it's not like that, right? And so what happened from that is it shielded me, it blocked me from the resources and help that could have really helped me sooner, possibly, right? And I believe things happen the way that they happen in those times for a reason. Either things happen for a reason, or you give a reason to the things that happen. That's what I believe. I always say. But I want to be able to talk about things in a way that help people who are in the middle, right? And help you re-identify what these things are and what it means to you and your sense of identity, and not feeling like I'm a failure, or I'm that depressed person, or I'm that battered woman, or I'm that whatever XYZ, fill in the blank, and feeling like I can't do this because of that, or I won't get help because I don't identify with that. I hope that makes sense. The third part of this is using brand, marketing, and business as a tool for self-awareness. So I think what has helped me in the past is having this bigger picture understanding of marketing and the way that people in psychology work. Purchasing decisions are all driven by desire or pain point, right? So I have a pain point, this is my issue, and this is the desirable, this is what I want, right? Or there's certain psychology that comes into play with the way that things move, the reason why people like things, the reason why things go viral, that kind of stuff, all that stuff. So those are things that I want to talk about in this channel, and pulling it into what it means for you as a business owner, but also as a person, right? And always connecting the two, right? So just like I said with the, being depressed and not seeking help because you don't identify with that, that's sort of marketing psychology, right? The promotional material or whatever, the ads that are put out for these things, they don't speak to the people who need them because the people who need them don't want to identify with it, right? That's a psychology thing. So talking about all of that stuff, pulling it all in together, but also talking get a little lighter here, talking about branding and business in a way that makes that connects the dots between personal development for just stuff like boundary setting, right? If you don't have healthy boundaries in your personal life, you might not have them. It's very likely you won't have them in your business. And so what does that look like? What does it mean to set expectations, right? So expectation setting is great for parenting. I love it for parenting because it's really good way of if you have a child who has a lot of temper tantrums and stuff, you do use expectation setting to curb the behavior. If you have a client or you tend to attract clients who are very needy in behavior, who are demanding or unhappy or unsatisfied or complain a lot, then you probably need to set better expectation settings at the beginning. So there's a lot of those sort of parallels that we can cover. Get real deep into a lot of stuff, and also talk about just the practical parts of branding and marketing and visual design to make sure that your business is a success. So to wrap it up, I wanted to talk about all of the stuff that we'll be covering in this channel, which will be anything to do with rebranding, branding, visual design, marketing, and business, but also relating it back to those emotional components, relating it back to, your personal lives, how to improve your personal life, how to change your life, how to end destructive cycles, and then how to to take what you've learned and put it back out into your brand, into your story, into your business, back into the communities, so that we can create this cycle of change, this cycle of positive change. So that is the goal of this channel. All right, if you'd like to learn more about me, more about my business, or to connect with me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram, @CatMayDesigns, or you can go check out the blog, rebrandyourworld.com. There's lots of goodies in there. Check out the 30-day brand if you're interested in creating a brand for yourself, DIYing it real easy. I'll go through all of it, everything that you need to know. And if you're interested in rebranding yourself from the inside out, learning more about that process that I use to change my own life, I ended my own destructive cycles and really create a new sense of identity, go on and download the free PDF below, Rebrand Yourself and Change Your Life in 7 Steps. All right, I hope you guys are doing well and having a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. That sounds ridiculous. I don't even, it's like a superhero, like doo doo doo. Here we go.